The reading for today comes from Luke 9, verses 51 to 62. Jesus and some others set out on the road for Jerusalem. Some went on ahead into a Samaritan village to make preparations, but the people would not receive Jesus because he was making for Jerusalem. Seeing this, the disciples James and John said, "Do you want us to call down fire from heaven to burn them up?" But Jesus turned and rebuked them, and they went off to another village. As they travelled along, they met someone on the road who said to Jesus, "I will follow you wherever you go." Jesus answered, "Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but I have nowhere to lay my head." To another, Jesus said, "Follow me." This one replied, "Let me go and bury my parents first." But Jesus answered, "Leave the dead to bury the dead. Your duty is to go and spread the news of the realm of God." Another said, "I will follow you, but first let me go and say goodbye to my people at home." Jesus said, "Once the hand is laid on the plough, no one who looks back is fit for the realm of God." In this reading is the wisdom of God.
When the time grew closer for Jesus to be lifted up, he set his face towards Jerusalem. The opening line of our gospel reading this morning tells us that this is the time that Jesus turns and heads towards Jerusalem. This verse is absolutely pivotal in Luke's gospel. It is the turning point in Luke's story about Jesus. Earlier in chapter 9, which we read a few weeks ago, we heard the story of the Transfiguration, when Jesus went up to the top of the mountain and there had his mountaintop experience, this account of his encounter with the presence of the Spirit of God. And now he's come down the mountain and he has turned towards Jerusalem. Jesus has made up his mind and he's set out. Jesus made a decision that had been developing in his thoughts as he went about the work that changed his life. And from this time forward, there was no turning back. As he moved, this was the defining moment in his life when he moved towards the cross and his death. And the words bristle with determination to get the job done and to finish the journey. But this short passage has two main parts. The first section is where the people of a particular Samaritan village refused to receive Jesus. And then there follows the section about the would-be followers of Jesus. And included, I get so enthusiastic. Included in this little passage, there are 3 aphorisms, these little pithy statements. They concern insecurity, death, and vision. So the first one is, foxes have holes and birds have nests, but I have nowhere to lay my head. In other words, on the journey that leads Jesus where he's going, there is no security, there is no comfort, and there is no pretty ending to the story. The second one is this: leave the dead to bury the dead. Now, these are very harsh words on the lips of Jesus. And they would have shocked and angered those who heard them because there were obligations and conventions surrounding the death of family and loved ones. What Jesus is saying is that death is not merely the absence of life. Death contaminates and ruins, and nothing can escape death. Because we find the word death so disturbing, we have substituted it with passing on, passing away, or he or she has passed. But remember that in this context, Jesus is heading towards his death. And the third one is this: there is no one who puts their hand to the plough and looks back is fit for the realm of God. If you're ploughing with a tractor, you only have time for a quick glance back, making sure that the ploughs are set properly. That first furrow, you line up your tractor with a tree, and you keep your eyes on that tree, and after that you go forward towards that so that you know that you're straight. You've got a ruler, a measure of where you're going. And after that first cut, you keep your eyes on the furrow that you turn your tractor around, and you keep your eye on that furrow that you have just ploughed, and you come back. And so you go each time measuring up exactly where you're going with that plough. When you plough, you're turning over the earth. You're turning over the resistance of the soil to the coming seed, burying that resistance and incorporating it into the soil and turning up the fertile earth to receive the seed. If you're ploughing, you're looking ahead, but you are looking more than at a tree or at the last furrow. You are looking into the future. You have a vision of a field in full growth and the harvest beginning. Jesus is looking to the future, God's future, seeing God's reign at work in the world, seeing what this world would really be like if it did open itself up to God, seeing people being touched by God's reign. And perhaps more than anything in this reading is about Jesus and his vision. He kept his eyes looking forward, looking ahead, looking to the future, God's future. Looking ahead, Jesus captured a vision of God's reign at work in our world. Looking ahead, Jesus saw how God's reign overturned sin and the destruction that it brings to people. Looking ahead, he saw the world becoming open to God. Looking ahead, he had a vision of people being touched by God's realm. The writer that we call Luke of this gospel underscores the significance of this as the turning point by using the word journey 7 times in only 7 verses. It was time for Jesus to leave Galilee and journey to Jerusalem. Jesus physically journeys from Galilee to Jerusalem, but this journey is more significant than that. It was time for Jesus to be taken up on the cross, taken up in the resurrection, and his moment of truth is at hand. He can't worry about people not giving him a welcome right now. He's on his way to establish God's welcome for all people. He can't wait for people to worry about physical comfort right now. He's on his way to suffer great discomfort so that he can provide God's people with real comfort. He can't wait for people to bury their dead right now. He's on the way to being buried himself so that new life can begin. And he can't even wait for people to say their goodbyes right now. He's on his way to bring all God's people into one family. Jesus caught the vision of God's welcome and God's comfort and God's life being extended to us through himself. Jesus kept his eye on that vision and he never looked back. See how this ties up with Jesus' image of the man ploughing. Jesus sets his sights on Jerusalem and is ploughing a furrow straight from his vision of God's future to us, our present. No one who puts his hands to the plough and looks back is fit for service in the kingdom of God. This is a harsh statement. And I'm inclined to say, well, who then could ever be fit for the kingdom of God? If what this means is never failing faith, without doubt, without regret, ever, then it can seem impossible. Even in this 21st century multitasking world we live in, with every possible organisational gadget for our benefit, most people, metaphorically, put their hands to the plough and look back, or they leave the plough altogether. Our problem is the same as the people in the gospel story. We like to make this into an either-or scenario. It's got to be one or the other. But if we take a closer look at the text, instead of either or, Jesus seems to be positing both and. And of course, Bob used that both and on Pentecost Sunday when he was preaching. Notice that both of the people that asked to go and take care of other business are exclusive in their request. Sure, I will follow you, Lord, but first let me go and bury my father. And then the other, yes, I will follow you. I'd love to follow you, but first let me say goodbye to the folks at home. They're expecting me to dinner. It would be rude not to show up. In both cases, and I suspect we could put a whole lot of other reasons in there, the answer is, yes, Lord, I will follow. I will pray. I will give. I will work. I will whatever. But first, I need to pay off my boat. I need to find a job. I need to get my tax done, especially today. I need to do the laundry. All of those things. It's the but first that seems to be the clue here, the key to what's happening. Those who come to Jesus are very well-meaning. Those who want to follow Jesus seem to be telling Jesus, to get on your train, I have to get off mine. In a sense, that's true. But this thinking makes it seem like two different journeys. And it seems unlikely that we could live the Christian journey of faith at all if this was so. This whole notion of setting one's face to Jerusalem that Luke begins in this passage and carries on for some 9 chapters carries a journey motive. Setting your face towards Jerusalem, you're on a journey. But is it one that you must start only after everything else is finished? I would hope not. Otherwise, we'd never get started. And I wonder if these people responded to Jesus by saying, I will follow you and I will bury my father. I will follow you and I will tell the ones at home that I love them as well. Jesus is not driving a wedge between family. Rather, he's indicating a conflict of interest. In some ways, we should expect no other response from Jesus. He says loud and clear to them, hey, you can't compartmentalize following me. You can't do it when you get the time, when you've cleared some space in your life. This is a way of life, which means, yes, bills must be paid, the children must be fed, taxes need to be paid, but follow me anyway. Follow me while doing these things. Follow me in a way that makes you do these things in a new way. Follow me forever. No but firsts, no insteads, no yes ands, no either ors, but both and. Both and is a very Benedictine idea. The Benedictines do the ordinary things extraordinarily well, making the whole of life a prayer, Everything is holy. When we get caught up in details that don't really matter, on so many specifics, we forget why we do them in the first place. All those distractions, we avoid when we have all of those distractions, we avoid the greater spiritual conversation that rises above all of that. Setting our face towards Jerusalem is to tilt our head in that direction that makes us see things as never before, makes us walk in directions we might not have ever walked, and provides us with companions that we may not have picked if we were left to ourselves. And it's not about what you are doing or not doing. It's more instead about what and who you are being. It's about what we finally put our hope in and trust in every day and all days. Following Jesus is 24 hours, 7 days a week. It doesn't mean not doing anything else. It means doing everything else with your face set forward to Jerusalem, a journey with your heart invested in God through the power and the witness of Jesus Christ. So today's gospel is about vision. It's about keeping your eyes forward and looking ahead. It's about looking to the future, God's future. It's about seeing God's reign at work in our world. It's about seeing what it would be like if this world really did open itself up to God. It's about seeing people touched by God's Spirit. But more than this gospel invites us to catch the vision, to see what Jesus saw. What would the world look like if God's reign overturned hatred? What would our community look like if God's reign overturned divisiveness? What would our cities look like if God's reign overturned hopelessness? What would our families look like if God's reign overturned selfishness? What would our jobs look like if God's reign overturned frustration? What would our schools look like if God's reign overturned the dangers there? What would our hearts look like if God's reign overturned guilt and shame and grief and fear? If we look at the world around us, you see that there is much to be ploughed under and turned over. On the news sheet today, I put a little reflection that I found probably, I can't even remember where I found it, but it was as I was starting out on my renewed journey of faith when I was in my early 40s. And I've kept it ever since, and it's in one of my journals. So I'm going to read this, and you can take it home because it's on your news sheet. This is a new day. God has given me this day to use as I will. I can waste it or use it for good. What I do today is important because I'm exchanging a day of my life for it. When tomorrow comes, this day will be gone forever, leaving something that I have traded for it. I want it to be gain, not loss, good, not evil, success, not failure, in order that I shall not regret the price that I paid for it. Amen.